All right, tonight we'll be doing a reading of a 6-2 manifesting generator on the left angle cross of healing. And this 6-2 manifesting generator is triple split definition. And rare for the triple split does not have emotional authority. Because to be triple split requires a minimum of 6 centers defined, because each part of each section of definition must have at least 2 centers. So to be triple split, there are no triple split people with only 5 centers defined, or 4 or 3 or 2 or 1. They all have either 6, 7, 8 or 9 centers defined. So that's one of the interesting facets or aspects to these very multifaceted people. I mean, triple split is kind of like 3 people in one, or someone going 3 directions at once, if that makes any sense. They're really multifaceted, and different people are going to bring out different aspects of them, because not everything is going to be apparent all the time. And unlike split definition, which is always craving to be fully bridged, meaning to have the 2 areas of definition connected, for triple split, they actually feel claustrophobic when that happens. If somebody bridges all 3 of their splits, they get kind of cabin fever. So I think as a general outline for this reading, we'll kind of just talk about the 3 different areas of definition. We can talk a little bit about what it is to be a 6-2. We can talk about the 6th line of gate 46, which is the day after I was born. I'm a 5th line on gate 46. And so I'm also on the left angle cross of healing. But we can talk maybe a little bit about the difference in the 5th and 6th line position here. And then we can do the not self reading, which for the triple split, like the single definition, it's going to be about the centers. Not really about the bridging gates as much. Because again, the triple split doesn't have such a strong desire to be bridged. So starting with, I guess, the kind of fundamental, talking about a manifesting generator triple split. So manifesting generator is already here to juggle a lot of different things. I mean, part of the manifesting generator aura, as distinct from the generator aura, is its ability to multitask and its ability to skip steps. You'll find that generators are really, the pure generator, the non-manifesting generator, they're really here to do one thing at a time. And the manifesting generator can do multiple things at a time, and they can kind of cancel things halfway through, and they have this ability to change things up a little bit, to change up the flow. Now in this case, what's interesting is the generator part and the manifester part are separated. We have what would be a pure ego manifester going from the 21 to the 45. This is from the ego to the throat. So if that was the only definition in the chart, we'd be looking at an ego manifester. And then we have a pure generator going from the sacral to the G center at 29 to 46 in the G center. And of course the personality sun is the 46. So we see also that we have this pure generator definition. So it's really only a manifesting generator as a composite of these 2 different aspects. Now the 3rd aspect would be the projected aspect, the 5818, which would essentially be a projector. So what we really have is 3 totally distinct areas of definition, one of which is a manifester, an ego manifester, the other of which is a pure sacral generator, and finally a splenic projector on that channel of judgment. So it's 3 very different mechanisms here. And we have that 2145, that manifesting mechanism, which operates through initiation. it initiates. And it's the strategy, of course, for anything that initiates is to inform first, but that's not really a mechanical strategy. That's just a strategy because if you initiate without giving people notice, it can have a pretty negative impact on them. However, because we're looking at a manifesting generator, the strategy is not to inform. It's to wait to respond. Some people say that manifesting generators should inform also, but I don't think that's how it works. I mean, to me, informing is a purely artificial strategy in the sense that Ra came up with it not as a mechanical thing, but as a practical strategy. The generator responding and waiting to respond, that is mechanical. There's nothing mechanical about informing. And yet, it's very important for manifestors. Why is it important? Because they can have such a big impact. An impact they don't even realize they're having. The manifesting generator cannot have that big of an impact through initiating alone. Sure, we all are able to have an impact in areas, certain areas of life. For instance, the manifesting generator, when they're waiting to respond, yeah, they can have their impact, but it's not like the manifestor impact. The manifestor impact is, Orson Welles does the radio broadcast of H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds. Orson Welles is a manifestor. He didn't sufficiently inform people that it was fiction. People took it seriously, and some of them committed suicide. Talk about impact. The manifestor impact, can be a huge, huge impact on people. And when they don't inform, it can cause all sorts of problems. The manifesting generator is a little bit different. For the manifesting generator, it's simply that they still have a generator aura, basically. Some human design practitioners like Chetan Parkin has said, no, there's actually 5 aura types. That the generator and the manifesting generator are just as different as a generator and a projector, or as a manifesting generator and a manifestor. That these are all unique. Or a reflector, and that each of these auras are different enough from the other that it's not really true that the manifesting generator is a subtype of generator. I have not found that to be true. I have looked to the generators and manifesting generators in my life, and maybe I just can't detect it. Chetan Parkin's a projector, so he might be more sensitive to the sacral, the quality of sacral energy. Sure, I feel sometimes that manifesting generators can put off a more scattered kind of energy sometimes, or they're just initiating so much more. If I hang out with a pure generator, they can get to a place where they're basically in their groove, and whether that groove is active or passive, or whether they're busy doing something or they're just chilling there, that groove is a steady, it's a constant, in a way that for manifesting generators it is not a constant, because at any moment the manifesting generator can turn on a dime and can break the flow and break the groove and start doing something else. So it's absolutely true that manifesting generators have distinct qualities. To me, however, I still include them as a subtype of the generator for most intents and purposes. So in any case, with the triple split, it's going to be a little tricky, just simply because triple split requires longer. It's almost like the emotional person waiting for emotional clarity. The triple split person, they need those splits to be bridged periodically over the course of time for information to be digestible by them, for them to digest information. So they take in some new information, and this could be about a decision, right? Like, oh, do you want to take this job? Here's a new job offer you have, or here's the ability to move somewhere, or here's this or that. It's going to take them time for that information to propagate, and for them to really make a decision out of their complete self, not just making a decision from one fragment of themselves. Now, obviously, the name of the game is the sacral here, because the sacral is ultimately the decision maker that the mind has to surrender to. So the sacral is ultimately going to be what determines the correct action for this person. But it needs to have access to that root splenic part as well as that ego throat part. So it really is interesting just thinking about this person as three unique individuals. If we start again with the manifested part, the 2145, this is a tribal channel. And it's basically a tribal channel of acquiring resources for the tribe, managing money issues for the tribe, having, those intimate bonds with your loved ones where you are the sort of money person for them. You're the one who fights on their behalf to get more money. You're the one who asks the relatives to borrow money on their behalf, the sort of peacekeeper, or the one who gets involved in all the money issues of the tribe. And ultimately also the voice of the have-nots. If there's a wealthy family member and the other family members are in debt, this is the voice that talks to the wealthy family member and says, look, speaking on behalf of the have-nots, I see that you're a have. Maybe you could give some of what you have to those who have not. It's this real tribal, it's nicknamed the money line. It's the tribal material kind of voice of the tribal elder. And it's also, especially as not self, which doesn't apply here, can be people who are really privileged. Here would be like, the opposite of someone who's acting entitled or acting privileged, and yet someone who demands the respect of a tribal elder. In some sense, when I see, a 4521, I think, well, everyone should give them the preferential parking seat and give them the seat at the head of the table and show them that extra respect. And for someone like myself, I have an undefined throat and I have gate 45. I know the not self of the gate 45 very well. The not self is entitlement and feeling like you deserve to be treated preferentially or to get special treatment or to get VIP treatment and so on. And it's a real, ugly side of the not self of that. It doesn't apply here because we're not talking about a not self gate. Not self gate would be an active gate in an undefined center, which we'll talk about later when we get to the not self reading. In this case, I believe it's the solar plexus. Yeah, so when we get to gate 30 in the solar plexus, that's a prime example of a not self gate. What I mean by that is that's a gate that is going to be dormant and will periodically become active through either an electromagnetic connection with gate 41, it's harmonic, or because the person has a defined solar plexus and so on. Whoa, okay. Crossing the street and whoa, hey, excuse me. Yeah, two people almost hit me. This is Santa Fe. The people are so reckless. Sorry, it's okay. Yeah, two near collisions. I had the light to cross, and happens in Santa Fe all the time. People just go through red lights from the. So in any case, I was paying attention. So so looking at this 2145, this is going to be the tribal aspect. This is the part that it's really all about support. It's about support, it's about loyalty, and it's really the part of you, the person I'm doing this reading for, that is there for the tribe, that is there to take charge as the tribal elder, to speak on behalf of your loved ones and to ensure their financial stability. And also having that gate 21, it's really about having the persistence, if you will, or the it's called biting through. It really means having the stamina to stay in control. And so looking at this chart, we see that right in the chart. This is an individual has the stamina to stay in control. Now, all the throat gates are undefined. Not undefined, are unconscious, excuse me. So we have a defined throat with unconscious design activations. We see the design 56, design 35, design 31. In this channel we were just talking about, this money line, this 2145, fully unconscious. So what that tells me is that here's someone who never really knows what they're going to say. Because what they're going to say And even action too. It's not just speaking, The throat is also the center for action and manifesting in the world. Here's someone who never really knows what they're going to manifest. They don't know what they're going to say. They don't know what they're going to do. They're going to do something, and they're unconscious. Their design side is prepared to do it and is about to initiate and is about to manifest, but they don't know what it's going to do. So, there's nothing bad here. As long as you're operating according to strategy and authority, it's just another thing for the mind to notice. The mind would notice, wow, I didn't really think that I was going to do that. But then again, I don't really have any idea what I'm going to do. Where did that come from? Well, it came from the ego. It came from that 2145. And if you've waited long enough, and if you've honored that sacral response, then the sacral information will have been bridged either through gate 51, or through gate 8, or through gate 20, or it will have gotten over to the spleen and then bridged through the spleen in gate 26. And basically, as a triple split, you have to wait for the information to propagate. That includes the sacral response. You might have a sacral response to something, but still be unable to act from that response until the bridge is there. So the standard advice for triple split, find a way to be in aura with other people. Find a way to go to a restaurant or go to a cafe. But right now there's the ongoing pandemic, and so we are supposed to social distance. And we should. We absolutely should all be social distancing. So in this case, triple split people kind of have it bad because they have to rely on a much smaller pool of potential auras that can bridge them. It's not as much of a problem for a triple split manifester. A triple split manifester is going to have a primary relationship with the planetary bodies and only a secondary relationship with other people in terms of the conditioning from the aura of the other person. But for a projector, for a generator, for a manifesting generator, primarily these types get information through aura contact, through bridging through the aura. That's what kind of wires you up. So it can be difficult to be triple split and feel like you don't really, you can feel discombobulated and like the three parts of you aren't communicating when you haven't been able to be in aura with somebody who bridges those. A thought experiment would be a triple split goes to a cabin in the woods for a month. For that whole month, say a triple split manifesting generator like this, they don't have any contact with anyone else. During this time, they get all sorts of information. And all this information piles up and accumulates, and they can't really put it together and synthesize it into a cohesive goal until they come back from this cabin in the woods, and the first day they're back, they go to have coffee with somebody, and bam, epiphany after epiphany after epiphany. They suddenly realize all this stuff. It all makes sense. It all connects. They suddenly, get something like emotional clarity. It's not emotional clarity, but we can call it triple split clarity. It's the clarity of, cohesiveness. There's a cohesion to having those splits bridged and allowing the synthesis of these different built up kind of information pools. The spleen is gathering its own information and the sacral is responding, but it can't communicate to the spleen. There's no direct connection between the two. This is why it is said that triple split people are designed to be in motion. They're not designed to be still. They're designed to move. And moving means going through many different auras. In this respect, the triple split is somewhat similar to the reflector or to a mental projector or some of these types where there's often the advice given that they can, or a self-projected projector even, which are all very different types. But the similarity between a reflector and a mental projector and a self-projected projector is that all of them are often given the advice to sample, for the reflector you say, sample the aura. For the mental projector you say, continue to evaluate in different environments because they all have undefined G-center. So the environment is very important for them. For the self-projected projector, you say, use your friends as a sounding board and talk to them and then listen to what you yourself are saying to them. Now, these are all obviously a little bit different from each other and different from the general triple split advice as well. But the similarity is that it's really about this process over time, that you can watch this process of evaluation occur where as you enter into different auras, you are not exactly sampling the aura the way that a reflector samples the aura, but you're at least experiencing different aspects of yourself that were previously dormant that are now becoming their own units. For instance, the splenic and the sacral part is a unit, distinct from the splenic and the ego. That's its own unit. And then the ego in the sacral is a third unit. So there's not only 3 different sections of the triple splits, areas of definition, there's also 3 different primary dyads, which are duos, they're pairs. There's 3 pairs. The pair splenic section and sacral and ego, spleen and ego. Those 3 are distinct. So it's interesting that and obviously there's going to be the case where none of them are bridged, like when you're all by yourself, and there's going to be the case where they're all bridged, where a person or persons bridge all of them. And especially when it's one person who bridges them all, that can be really claustrophobic. Like I was mentioning, that can be the cabin fever theme. So we really have 5 cases. We have the case where none of your splits are bridged. Those, the areas of definition are all separate. In that case, information is going to keep accumulating, and you're going to be unable to fully digest it, and unable to fully evaluate it, and unable to fully, synthesize it. And then there's going to be the case where all your centers are connected, particularly by one other person, but in any case, when they're all connected, that's going to have its own problems because they don't really all need to be connected. What's more interesting for the triple split person is all the different ways they can be connected. What happens if somebody just connects your G center to your ego through 51? Oh, well, what happens if the spleen connects through 26? Or what happens if the sacral connects to the root through gate 9? In all these different ways. What happens when the G center connects to the spleen through gate 57? All these different ways they can be bridged, bringing out different themes within you based on the channel. But besides that, just allowing the information flow between these different centers. So we also see that we're looking at a quad right here. And I really should have mentioned this earlier. I like to start with this. Quad right is so different from our left world. Leftness is the vestiges of the past, really. Leftness is strategic. Leftness is survival-oriented. It's goal-oriented. It has a strong sense of purpose, and it's trying to fulfill its purpose through strategy and through planning and through all of these left things that we've learned from our left history. All of history is left. The history of domination and of survival and of relying on the mind and the activity of the ever-vigilant mind to ensure survival. And when we see a quad right person, they're so different even from somebody who has 3 right variables and 1 left. Because even someone who has 3 right variables and 1 left, that 1 left variable is going to tether them in some way to the old world. That 1 left variable, whether it's the view or the motivation or the diet or the environment, it's going to connect them to that active, busy world. But when you find somebody who's fully right like this, they really are in a category all their own. And I don't have enough time, unfortunately, to go fully into what it is to be quad right. But I'll just say, for the quad right person, they're here to be receptive. They're here to be resources to others, to the correct others. And it's very important for them not to get overwhelmed by all the information, because actually they'll never be overwhelmed by information. What they'll be overwhelmed by is the striving to organize that information and to even just try to access different information. It's basically, right variable is made to be an information sponge, but left variable looks more like the information sponge. Well, how does that work? Well, it's a deception. The left variable is really just collecting patterns, collecting strategies, collecting little, tricks almost. And what the right variable is doing is actually taking things in deeply as the experiential essence. Basically, the right variable is taking in the essence of the experience. If a right variable student spends time with the teacher, they take in deeply the essence of that teacher. Left variable looks like it has so much more information, because left variable, I'm very left. I only have one right variable. It's my environment, but everything else is left. And an example would be, I seem to be so full of information. And then you talk to somebody who's quad right, or has, a lot of right variable placements, and they might be struggling to access that information. They're drawing a blank. They're trying to say something and they're forgetting it, and so on. Well, this is because they aren't playing to their talents. They're trying to do what I'm doing. See, the left mind only really remembers sound bites. It remembers bullet points. It remembers, a tiny fraction of the totality of the information. It's like a low-res icon of the information. But left variable can access it at will. It's all at their fingertips. It's there. At any point you can ask a left variable person a question, and they will search using this information retrieval function to search and basically try. They can actually take part in this striving or trying to get that information and succeed. They can triumph through this striving. Well, the right variable is not here to strive. It's not here to try. It's here to be in a flow state. And what happens is you get a right variable person in a flow state, and they tell you the most incredible information you've ever heard in your life. And you go, how did you do that? And they don't know. And they can't reproduce it. But at that moment, the magic of you and them, the magic of the person pulling from the right variable. See, the right variable is meant to have information pulled out of them. They're not meant to be able to sit there and just spout off information through striving. Well, I'm going to try to talk about this now and try to talk about that now. Not how it works. They're here to get into a flow. So anything that facilitates the flow for the right variable is great. Because in that flow, they will say things they didn't realize they knew. So this is what it is to be quad right. To be quad right is basically, you're not like other people. Only 1/16 of the world is quad right. The quad right is the futuristic, most future-oriented, most receptive, and non-strategic, and in that sense, most vulnerable of all of the configurations of variable. So being quad right, it requires real self-love and a self-trust that you have the information you need, and you don't have to do what the left variable world, that the other 15 types all have at least one left variable. They're all going to be biased in some way to, what's business as usual, where the student comes in, they take notes, they study, they're working their mind and using their mind, almost like cracking a whip, sharpening their mind, playing chess, playing Sudoku, strategizing, mentally modeling, organizing the data according to standards. Well, right variable will idiosyncratically organize the data in a way that a left variable person can never imagine. But they don't do it by trying. So again, just knowing that you're quad right, how important it is to appreciate that so much of the world is going to expect from you to be not in a flow, but to be whatever the opposite of flow would be. pointed, to have a focused, pointed consciousness, which can skip from one topic to the next through trying, through striving. And the right variable, the quad right, is not meant to exert that much effort. It's like it'll damage your cognition by exerting all that effort. It's meant for it to naturally flow without exertion, effortlessly. It's meant to kind of express effortlessly. And it does this through being a resource for the correct others. And realizing that these others in your life will typically always pull the same thing from you. That if you want to access some of the information you know, it's really about the people in your life. And that person in your life will always pull out a certain side of you. Similar to triple split definition, actually. It's very similar. I never really thought about that until now. But being triple split, it's a similar kind of theme. Different people in your life are going to bring out different qualities in you based on how they bridge your areas of definition. But for the quad right, it's so important, the people that are drawing from their well. Because the quad right has the vastest, most incredible ability to store these essences, these ineffable essences. One of my go-to thought experiments would be, say I studied under Ra, and say somebody who was quad right studied under Ra. Well, at the end of our studies, I would be able to tell you a heck of a lot of what Ra said, and what patterns he gave, what strategies he gave, what approaches he employed, what ways of structuring and organizing information he did, and all this stuff. And it would look like I really know the information deeply. But actually, even deep knowledge for left variable is still knowledge of patterns and of strategies. It's knowledge of sound bites, It's knowledge of points. These are points. And all I've done is collected the points. But I haven't, it's like digital knowledge versus analog. I haven't collected the essence of that person. Now, for a quad right person who spent a lot of time with Ra, it would be almost as if they had the essence of who Ra was somewhere in them, that they were able to absorb that essence and distill that essence and have a sort of experiential synthesis of that other person, such that when the right person pulls information from them in the future, they would surprise everyone with what they know without realizing that they know it, if that makes sense. So it's really a unique way of being. I mean, one of the main things I hear from people who have right mind, which is to say right personality sun earth and right personality nodes, oftentimes what I'll hear from them is that they're overwhelmed by all the human design information. They're just totally overwhelmed. And I get it. It's a lot of information. But right variable, part of it is that they need to trust that they're getting the information that they need from it, and trust that by paying attention to the information, they know more than they have access to. They can't just pull out that information and show somebody, but it's there. It's kind of like, I love the French philosopher Gilles Deleuze, and he wrote with Felix Guattari a kind of masterpiece of experimental philo-fiction, this book of avant-garde philosophy called 1,000 Plateaus in 1986, something like that. And anyway, at one point he talks about picking up speed and how to read their books, they want you to kind of just keep reading, and even if you don't understand, don't stop and don't grab the dictionary and try to figure out what they meant and hold up, the words. Instead, just keep going with the words, even though you don't get it. And that by continuing on, you pick up speed, and there's a sort of crescendo effect where something like emergence happens. From continuing to read, even though you don't understand, understanding emerges. That's how it is for the right variable. Your understanding emerges without you having any part in it. And the panic of, why am I not like all these other people in school? Which again, this is, not just quad rights, but anybody who has a sun, earth, personality side, right variable, or both personality side, right variable, and so on, they're going to really have a conscious feeling of, why don't I organize information the same way? Why is it so hard for me to pattern match? Because the right variable is not here to pattern match. Left variable is here to pattern match and go, is this true or false? Is it relevant or irrelevant? Is it correct or incorrect? Is it, it's here to compare. Left variable takes an information, compares it to other information. For right variable, it's beyond comparison. It's singular. It's something that exists outside of frameworks. Okay, well, I didn't want to get too deep into right variable here. You can find information on the quad right. There was a great website called Quad Right Facts, and if any of my listeners know where I could find that now, unfortunately the Internet Archive did not save it. It was on loveyourselftolife.com, and it was someone named Alexa something or other, and it was Quad Right Facts, Love Yourself to Life, and it was a great website aimed at quad rights, and there really aren't a lot of human design communities for quad rights. There might be a Facebook group, but in any case, if anyone has that resource, please share it. I may have copied it to an email at some point, but I haven't been able to find it. Okay, so I'm going to wrap up pretty soon here. This will be a shorter one, but I guess the next thing that would be useful to me is to touch on being a 6-2, and then we'll end on the tried and true not self reading, which if you've listened to my other readings, you should be pretty familiar with. I like to do the not self reading at the end because it's something that I kind of want to echo, if that makes sense. And, I think the rest of this is all well and good, but if you're not able to recognize the not self, you're not going to be able to recognize the true self, and when you really are living as yourself. So first I'll just mention about the 6-2. Oh yeah, and we were going to talk about the 46-6. I guess I'll get into that now. So the 46-6 is called integrity. And it's pretty different from the 46-5. It's pretty different. Being a fifth line on the Cross of Healing, Ra really gives the fifth lines a bad rap on the Cross of Healing. He says, first of all, that the 46-5 is the weakest fifth line of all of the hexagrams. I have an undefined ego. That's a personal affront. No. But I remember reading that, and, because I'm born on line 5 of gate 46, so I have the 46-5. And I was like, what does this mean? That the other 63 fifth lines out there are stronger and better and so on. I think it comes down to Ra has a really negative idea, and probably justified, of the not self of the fifth lines on the Cross of Healing. Because there's two crosses of healing. There's one with the sun in 46 and one with the sun in 25. And the not self of them is really frustrated with other people all the time, or disappointed with other people, or bitter about other people, or angry with other people, because they're not letting you control them. See, Ra makes the Cross of Healing to be a real control game. The first thing your doctor does is, they say, don't do this, and sit here, and let me control you, and do what I say. And so he sees the whole healing racket for the not-self world as about control. Obviously, it's about more than that. But this is what he sees for the fifth line, is that these are people that are basically taking control of others' lives. He also points out that the fifth line of gate 25 is quite sickly. So Ra kind of has a negative sort of bent. It's funny. There's certain lines or certain combinations where Ra just really didn't like them. And I think it's just because of the not self, because his advice for the true self for the fifth line on gate 46, as well as the fifth line of gate 25 for that matter, is how important it is to take care of themselves, to stop trying to control everybody else, stop trying to heal everybody else, and to start actually realizing that they themselves need healing. God helps those who help themselves, that kind of thing. To have a good dose of enlightened selfishness. Well, for the sixth line, it's different. The sixth line, Ra speaks very highly of them. And rightly so. I was lucky, I was born September 25th, and I have a best friend from when I was younger. I've known maybe over 20 years now. for about 20 years. And he was born September 26th. And so he was born in the 6th line of gate 46, like this individual here. And so I've gotten to see that integrity really makes sense for them. It is one of the aspects of what it means to heal, to have integrity. You have to have integrity to heal. You have to not let yourself, be compromised in that way. So we see here the exaltation of line 6, integrity. The wisdom to secure one's identity through careful consideration of the restrictive potential of commitments. See what it means to have integrity. To actually know who you are. Because remember, this is a G-center gate, so it's about securing your identity, knowing who you really are by careful consideration. This is the 6th line theme, you're kind of outside of it and watching it and observing. And they're carefully considering the restrictive potential of commitments. See, this is because gate 46 is the harmonic of gate 29, the gate of saying yes, the gate of the commitment of sacral energy. So when we see someone like we're looking at here with this 2946, and I have this channel as well, it's all about be careful what you say yes to. Only make sacral yes. Like other generators, manifesting generators, maybe they say yes and they don't really feel it sacrally and they can get out of it. But if you have gate 29, you're not getting out of it. You're locked into that. You're committed. You said yes to that. Which is funny, by the way, when someone with gate 29 says no, everyone's so shocked. They say, hey, you coming to the party? Nope. They're like, what? What? Because everything in your aura screams yes. It's saying yes to life. It's saying yes to everything, Gate 29 people have a lot of yes in their life. But the gate 46 here, across the channel, the harmonic, is saying, hey, this is what the 6th line's about. The integrity to secure your identity, who you really are, through careful consideration of the restrictive potential commitments. The detriment, deceiving oneself and others by overextending one's resources and eventually being in the position of having to break promises. A drive for success that will not say no and will end up breaking promises. Because this is a channel of success as well. Succeeding where others fail and failing when others succeed. Although hopefully the latter only occurs if you're not following strategy and authority. So yeah, this is pretty different from the 46-5. And it really ties into what it is to be a 6-2, a 6th line. The 6th line personality is the trustworthy personality. Even when they're hypocritical, they're still trustworthy because you trust them to have integrity. You trust them to be detached and not to play favorites and things like that. You trust them to kind of have a viewpoint from the outside. Of course, the 6-2 doesn't start this way. They start in their 3rd line phase. And they start optimistic, and they become more and more and more pessimistic, which is one of the 3rd line themes. And this pessimism peaks in their late 20s and early 30s. It culminates in them essentially giving up on the fantasy of the soulmate. And then they go on the roof. And when they're on the roof, they're inaccessible to everybody. They're not really there. They're just watching life. There's no value judgment in any of this. It's okay. In fact, for 6-2s, they're relieved. They go, oh my God, this is amazing. I don't have to get punished anymore. I don't have to be martyred anymore. I don't have to go through all that crap that I went through in my 20s. This is amazing. The 30s are great. They love it. But other people might have a problem with it. If you're married to somebody and your partner is expecting you to be really engaged and really present in the relationship. The 6th line on the roof is aloof. They're distant. They're not engaged in that way, and that's okay. Each of us, when we're in relationships with other people, we have to understand that those relationships are limitations. We have to embrace those limitations. We have to accept the other person as they are, not try to make them anything else. Don't try to make a 6th line on the roof be engaged. Don't try to make them care about a bunch of stuff they don't care about. Don't try to make them be present all the time. It's exhausting to them. They like having their respite, their escape. The 6th line on the roof is like, wow, I finally made it to a place where I'm like in a good place. Like I have my setup. People can't touch me. They can't get to me. They can't get under my skin. I'm independent. And so even in a relationship or a partnership, the sixth line on the roof is going to have a certain level of independence and of standing apart. And then there's the Chiron phase, the flowering. And the flowering is what happens after typically age 53, where the sixth line comes down off the roof. Oftentimes they don't want to, oftentimes they want to stay there. But this is where the real potential for the soulmate occurs. They've kind of given up on the idea of the soulmate at the end of their 20s, and then they've gone through this phase of just saying, well, maybe there's no such thing as a soulmate, but that doesn't really matter anyway. This aloofness, this distance where they aren't letting themselves be hurt anymore. They're not letting themselves get their hopes up so high anymore. They're not letting themselves overvalue things the way they used to. And then finally they come down off the roof and they go, wow, or they have the potential anyway to go, wow, the soulmate is real. And now I'd just like to finish on the not self reading. I'm going to have to cut this one kind of short, but I think it'll be sufficient. So for triple split, the not self is the same as for single definition in that it focuses on the centers. So what this means is the centers are going to be the dominant not self themes. Now, the idea in human design is that when you make decisions correctly, following your strategy and authority, you will have signposts specific to your type. The signpost for the manifesting generator is satisfaction as well as peace, being at peace after they've initiated. And when you've acted correctly as yourself, from a place of true sacral response and of that information being able to be propagated throughout the form and so on, you're really living as yourself, well, you're going to find that satisfaction, you're going to find that peace. And that's going to come from using your energy correctly. It's really about your work. For generators, for manifesting generators, it's what you use your energy for. What are you building? Are you building the right thing? What are you embodying? What are you doing? What are you successful at? You have that channel of success. You can be so successful, but if you're not successful at the correct thing for you, it'll end up in frustration and anger. So we use these keynotes, the signature or signatures of the manifesting generator, satisfaction and peace. I was thinking about your channel of success there. So satisfaction and peace, these are your signposts for when you've been making decisions correctly as yourself. And then we have frustration and anger. And these are signposts when you've not made those decisions correctly. So you can get this feedback loop where you go, okay, I'm getting the hang of this. Now I feel like I've made a decision with my sacral. And then you go, but why am I still frustrated? And if you persevere just a little bit more, if you really have a sacral yes to it, which, by the way, for manifesting generators, sometimes come out as actions, not just sounds. But in any case, as you've discovered and you've followed your sacral response, and you'll be able to see if it really worked, and you'll be able to see through that feeling of satisfaction and go, wow, I guess that really was satisfying to me. I didn't think it would be, but it was, Or, wow, I guess I made a mental decision. I guess I wasn't actually trusting my sacral response. I thought I was, but I tricked myself because I'm frustrated. Well, the other aspect of it, and this is applicable to the not self reading, is that the not self will essentially threaten frustration and anger. By that I mean the inner voice of the mind will say, this is what I have to do to avoid frustration and anger. And in your case, it's going to be heavily, heavily, heavily focused on that undefined solar plexus. You only have 3 undefined centers as it is, and the solar plexus is the second strongest overall in terms of the not self hierarchy, compared to the ajna, which is the 5th strongest, and the head, which is the 6th strongest. And so I'm not saying that the head and the ajna aren't going to give you problems, but those are more like the outer shell of the not self. People will see the undefined head, they'll see the undefined ajna, and they'll go, oh, here's somebody who's willing to think about my problems. Here's somebody I can call up on the phone and just tell all my problems, and they'll think about them. And here's somebody who'll try to figure it out and try to make sense of it and try to talk it through with me. And, they'll see that your mental resources are available for them. even if, they shouldn't be, right? Because the true self of the undefined head and ajna will say, I don't know and I don't care. The true self will say, I don't want to solve your problem. I don't want to think about this. It does nothing to do with me. I don't, and it'll just notice instead, it'll become a window that will bring you wisdom about the clarity or lack thereof of other people's thinking. As soon as you stop thinking about things that don't matter, and as soon as you stop pretending to be certain or trying to be so sure about everything, you can then use these two open centers of the head and the ajna as windows into the clarity or lack thereof of other people's heads and ajnas. Okay, but the solar plexus is a different story. Solar plexus is deep underneath this. People don't just see that, They don't look at you and go, oh, here's somebody with undefined solar plexus. They look at you and they see the undefined head, the undefined ajna. But deep underneath that, in this very personal, painful place, really, because the not-self is always where we suffer and where the real dilemmas in life happen. Deep underneath, there's this part of you, really the mind, which is saying, I have to avoid confrontation. I can't let myself know the truth. I have to avoid the truth. I have to avoid the confrontation. And if I don't do that, I'm going to be frustrated, I'm going to be angry. So it's this part of you that says, to avoid frustration and anger, I'd better not rock the boat. To avoid frustration and anger, I'd better not challenge them, I better not confront them. It's undefined solar plexus. Really, it's about not wanting to disappoint people, not wanting to not live up to their expectations of you, not wanting to make them emotional, make them sad because of some decision you've made or some truth. Basically, it's hiding the truth. The undefined solar plexus is the great liar that basically is constantly hiding themselves, hiding how they really feel, hiding what they really want, hiding everything about themselves, and showing this false self to people. Ra-Uru-Hu had the undefined solar plexus, and that was the strongest not self-conditioning center for him. He was a single definition person who had a defined ego. So for him, he talks about how his mother thought he was the perfect son. And this is because that undefined solar plexus won't let the mother see. They'd rather lie to the mother to feed into the illusion of the golden child, of the perfect son. It's, the undefined solar plexus is constantly showing a censored version of yourself to other people, not wanting them to see the real you, feeling ashamed of the real you, not wanting them to know, and also for the very practical reason that there's a real fear of emotional turbulence from the other. Because when you have an undefined solar plexus, you're taking in their emotional state so deeply. And when they're sad, you're even sadder. And when they're happy, you're even happier. And it's amplifying whatever comes your way. So there's this real reluctance to say or do anything that would disappoint the other person. What ends up happening is the person with the undefined solar plexus ends up living their entire life hiding who they really are, hiding what they really want. This is the dilemma here. Looking at your gate 6, integrity. This is the integrity to tell somebody, hey, I can't make this commitment with you because I've carefully considered that commitment and I've realized there's the potential to be restrictive of me in a way that I can't abide. And so it's the ability to say no to somebody, but with that undefined solar plexus, the mind is going to be saying, no, don't tell them that. If you tell them that, you'll be frustrated and angry. You have to hide that from them. Never let them know. And so it spends all this time hiding, all this time with secrets, hiding who you really are, not wanting to show them who you really are. So terrified if they see who you really are, there will be problems. And you'll end up frustrated and angry. So that's what the mind is doing. At every step, the mind is going to be there to say, don't let them see it. Keep them at arm's length. Don't let them get too close. They'll ask you something. Hey, are you happy in this relationship? And before you can go, uh-huh, or uh-uh, the solar plexus goes, yeah, of course I'm happy. Why would you say such a thing? And it jumps in there as the mind to try to damage control, to try to make sure that they're seeing the image of you that you want them to see. This is the false self. This is showing the false self to the world, constructing a false self for the benefit of the other because they, quote unquote, can't handle the truth. I'm going to show you a version of me that I want you to see. And this version of me, we have gate 30 here. It's going to be a version of you that is worldly, that is experienced, and it's going to really try to make decisions that avoid the truth of how fate could take anything away at any moment. See, gate 30 is the fear of fates. It's the fear that if you really show someone who you really are, and you actually get committed and involved with that person, that they could be taken away from you by fate. Now, of course, this is going to tie in with the 6th line and all these other aspects as well. So what we're really seeing is, here's somebody where it's correct for them during the roof phase to be a little bit distant and aloof. But even then, they have to be able to confront. They have to have that integrity. And this is the battle. The battle is between who you really are, which is a person with integrity, a person who has the integrity to really be yourself, and then the not self, which is there to pull you away from your integrity under the auspices of not hurting anyone's feelings, under the auspices of not disappointing them, and so on. So again, it's this battle between the self and the not self. And it really plays out in the solar plexus. You can ask yourself, am I avoiding confrontation and truth? You can feel it as nervousness building up. And when you feel that nervousness, that's telling you that there's something that you're avoiding, that there's something that you're not confronting, that there's something that, you can't look at that truth yourself. And all of this attempt to protect others from the truth would be better directed at asking yourself, am I avoiding looking at the truth? All right, that about does it. Hope you enjoyed this, and feel free to comment any ideas, anything at all, and thanks for listening.